Hi there, I'm Paige Abbott. I'm a registered psychologist in the province of Alberta. Thanks so much for joining me today. I want to provide a quick disclaimer that self-help videos like this and other materials are great, but they are not a substitute for professional assessment and treatment. If you are struggling, I encourage you to reach out to a provider in your local area who can support you and get you going on your journey. Again, thanks so much for tuning in. Today I wanted to talk about how to kind of work with our tricky little brain that most of us have to some degree. We all have that inner, I'm going to swear here, asshole within us. That part of our brain that doesn't treat us very well, doesn't talk to us very well. It's not realistic, it's not fair, it's not compassionate, it's not kind. For some people, that part of the brain is pretty loud and it's almost running the show. It dominates their thinking, their feeling, their actions. This is usually what will show up when people identify having addiction and mental health challenges and diagnoses. That inner thought process often is quite destructive and quite impactful. And therefore, addressing that inner thought process is a huge component to recovery. And often it's a bit of a strange idea for people to really consider that we have these two inner voices. Some people even recognize that they have multiple inner voices. I've had some clients say they feel like they have an inner committee or board of directors. So there's multiple different voices, but to not confuse things too much, we'll simplify it that there's the kind of healthy, authentic voice within, and then there's this inner jerk voice, and you can call that whatever you want. Some people call that inner jerk the addiction, their anxiety, their depression, their inner asshole, whatever you want to call it. You can give it a person's name if you want. You can give it a label of any sort. Some people call it the devil, and the angel voice, whatever kind of distinction makes sense for you. That's really not the important part, meaning the label. The important part is the recognition that there are these two separate voices within you. Because often when people are living life, and certainly when they first present for therapy, these voices have become merged, and that's a problem because this beautiful, authentic voice of the self has become mixed in with this other unhelpful voice. And because this unhelpful voice can be so loud and so convincing, what I find is that it's almost kind of taken over the healthy and the authentic voice. So now this inner, kind, compassionate, loving voice is so quiet and so faint in people's thinking and lives, but this other voice that can be so destructive because often it's pursuing kind of instant gratification, immediate reward, high highs, low lows. It's pursuing these extremes in life that when that's the dominant voice, it's extremely impactful and really difficult that people can't treat themselves with love and compassion and fairness. So once you've kind of accepted this idea that there's these two different voices within you, which often will feel competing. One is a supportive, kind, loving voice. The other is the complete opposite. It's a destructive train wreck voice that's really just looking for that immediate gratification, quick relief. As I said, the high highs, the low lows. It's looking for the hit. It's looking for the high of dopamine, and it will take it wherever it can get it. So that's a real clash. This voice wants peace, contentment, serenity. This voice wants total chaos. Once you've established that there are these two competing voices, a very important question then becomes, what on earth am I supposed to do with that? Well, part of what you will need to do with that is, for one, cultivate awareness about how these different voices sound, what their goals are, what their intentions are, how they kind of drive your thoughts, feelings, and behavior. And then you'll start to really see how different these two voices are in terms of their motivation and their drivers. Once there's some awareness that's starting to build, We need to step into acknowledgement. So, recognizing that there are these two different voices, and then also the action of what do we do when we're aware that there's these two different voices. We hear this unhelpful voice talking. What's the action then? Well, a big part of the action is actually learning how to deal with that inner unhelpful voice, much like we would an external person who we don't really like dealing with. So you can think of it like an inner roommate who unfortunately you can't just evict. I've heard that description. You can think of it like an annoying neighbor that, again, you can't ask them to move out, so they're in there. Some people think of it like an inner, like, coworker or an inner friend, although it really doesn't feel like a friend that you would want to be a part of. But recognizing it as that kind of dysfunctional, toxic voice within you will help you to then work towards boundaries. And often when people think about boundaries, they think of them externally. And certainly external boundaries are very important, but it can also be very important to say no and to have boundaries within our own thinking and our own self. And this is primarily because we don't want this unhelpful voice running the show. So once there's some awareness of how that voice sounds, what it's after, what it's looking for, when you can start to acknowledge that voice being active and talking to you, what then? What's the action? Well, quite simply, the action will be you need to learn how to not try to fight that voice away. So yelling at it, telling it that it needs to go away, that it's not helpful, that it's a jerk, just shut up. That's really not going to get you where you want. Again, this voice, it likes drama. So if you're approaching it with drama, it's going to kind of grow. It's going to be happy. And we don't want it to be happy. We want it to be sort of quiet, not fulfilled, not very content. So what do we do instead? This voice is chirping. We don't like it, but we can't push it away. We can't yell at it to make it stop. So what do? Well, we can start to approach it with a little bit more peace, compassion, understanding. And basically, I summarize this as we need to acknowledge, but then we need to turn away. We basically need to treat it like a tantruming child. With a tantrum, the more energy you give to it, the longer it will go, the bigger it will get. It's actually the same thing with that inner voice. It is, in a sense, like a tantruming child. So what we need to do is basically just acknowledge, well, yep, that voice is active, it's tantruming, it wants something, it's trying to pull me in this different direction, but I don't want to go in that direction. So I'm going to acknowledge, hey brain, I hear you, I know that you're active, but then we're going to turn away. So we're going to turn back to whatever activity, whatever task, whatever you were doing in life at that moment. So that requires a bit of mindfulness, being able to turn back to the present moment and literally just talk yourself through, allow this voice to start talking, to say, yep, I hear you, I see you, thanks but no thanks. I'm going to turn back to whatever else I'm doing, and I'm going to use this voice to talk myself through that. So I'm going to return back to work. I'm going to literally talk myself through what are the next steps for me. Or I was cleaning the sink. What are the next steps in that for me? Maybe I'm going to turn on some music. Maybe I'm going to go move my body. Maybe I'm going to do something that just allows me to actually take care of myself and leave this voice kind of going, what the heck? Where'd you go? How come you're not giving me any attention, any energy? And much like a tantruming child, that voice will quiet down. It will come back. So unlike a tantruming child, the child doesn't, this voice doesn't get older and grow out of those tantrums. It is something that we may have to deal with periodically throughout many months, years, even the rest of your life to a certain extent. But if you can learn how to acknowledge, but just really not give that voice the time of day, too much attention, too much energy. It's extremely beneficial, and that allows this authentic voice to grow louder, to grow stronger, to feel empowered, that you are now connected with yourself. And that is a beautiful place to be. So how do we say no to ourselves? We acknowledge, we turn towards, but then we refocus. We refocus back on our lives, our priorities, what we were doing that was important to us, and we keep living our lives. And we try to leave this voice kind of in the background, in the dust. We don't need it. It's not helpful. It's not serving us. Let's say no. No, thank you. I hear you. I even had some clients say they will turn to it and go, yeah, thanks. I hear you. I'm listening, but I'm not going to go there. So you can find different responses that feel comfortable for you to basically acknowledge. You hear it, you see it, but you're not going to feed into it. You're not going to buy in. So acknowledge, turn away. Acknowledge, move forward with your life, your tasks, your priorities. If you need some professional support to support you in this journey, I by all means recommend this. And that might be a cognitive behaviorally focused therapist, but it might not be. It might be someone who's more emotion focused, which does also help with this process of nurturing that authentic, congruent part of you, while keeping in mind that of course there's a cognitive element. All of these things work together, but just finding a provider that you trust and feel comfortable with, that you can do some personal exploration of this issue. There might be support groups you stumble across. You might explore this more in your own journaling and reflection. However you go about it, I would just encourage you to keep working towards that separation of the voices, the acknowledgement of the unhelpful voice, nurturing the helpful one, and moving forward in the direction that you want to go, leaving this guy behind. Thanks so much for watching. Take care, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye for now.